Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Martin Davidson, CMG, the CEO of our illustrious organization.
Thank you.
Martin joined the British Council in Beijing in 1984, working with just 6 people in a converted cycle shed, right?
In a
British embassy. And he returned as director in 1995 in a fast-growing operation which is now considered fundamental to our work in cultural relations. And not many of us know that Martin speaks fluent Mandarin and Cantonese, considered to be two of the most difficult languages in the world. Martin, as Rob said, is in New Delhi and was earlier in Mumbai as part of the Prime Minister David Cameron's official delegation to India. Martin, how was the visit and the experience of traveling with the Prime Minister to India?
I think the visit's gone actually very well. It's a very strange thing to be on a Prime Minister delegation because you're part of 100+ people, most of whom have very large egos, and most of whom expect the world to revolve around them. And all of a sudden, actually, we're hanging around waiting for the Prime Minister a lot of the time. But I think there are a number of real benefits we get from being part of this. First of all, there's a recognition that the work of the British Council is important, that it's something that we should be part of a large delegation which looks at the relationship between two countries. From a personal point of view, of course, it's hugely helpful to be able to have time with other people on the delegation. So there's a lot of really senior British figures there, and being able to spend time with them is hugely helpful. As well, of course, as the opportunity to be part of some fantastic events and activities. But I think what really came through for me from this visit was the way in which the Prime Minister spoke about the importance of the wider relationship, the education relationship, the cultural relationship. I was delighted that at his speech in Mumbai, he really focused the speech on the importance of the wider cultural relationship. I think those of you who were at the Queen's birthday party last night also heard him talk about the importance of the education relationship. So I think that for me is very, very important, because it always worries me when you have a rhetoric which is all around trade, yes, not around relationships, because I think relationships are what drives the rest.
Okay. With the visit over, how do you feel we are viewed by the British government, and how will this influence the organization's future?
I think we're in a very good place. As I said, I think the Prime Minister has publicly recognised the value of what we do, and certainly I think the Foreign Secretary, William Hague, has in a number of recent speeches made very clear the importance of cultural relations. It's a tendency to use a language of soft power, which is not a piece of language I particularly like, but it's the currency of the time. And I think we as an organisation are seen as absolutely central to that. That has huge upsides. The downsides, of course, are that if you're doing something which is seen as more and more important, then other organisations are going to want to do and be part of that. So it means that we have got to be better, faster, more effective in what we do and the way that we spend our money and earn our money than ever before. So there is never a wholly one-sided aspect to this. And I think that there are greater and greater expectations of us. People become impatient if we aren't able to move at the pace that they expect us to or want us to. And that is nowhere more true, I think, than here in India, okay, where the agenda is across the board huge.
That actually connects very quickly to our next question. You heard a lot about you speaking about the entrepreneurial public service.
Yep.
What do you mean by it? And weren't we always entrepreneurial public service? I mean, what changes?
What I mean by it is, first of all, as we all know, the government grant which flows to the British Council is reducing. It isn't going to go back up in the future hugely. It may go up and down a little bit, but it's not going to be transformed. But what we've really done as an organisation and collectively is we have changed our organisation right at its fundamentals, simply by becoming an organisation which now has to earn more than 75% of its own income. That is a huge shift for us. It might seem like it's just a bit more of the same to us, but the cumulative effect is that we now, as an organisation, have to earn between 550 and 600 million pounds every single year for the foreseeable future, plus, in order to stay where we are. And we actually have ambitions to grow. So it's putting us in a very different place. I think that there is concern within the organisation that that drives us into a commerciality. And we don't want to be a commercial English language teaching organisation or a commercial exams organisation. What we want to be is a public service. And I think understanding in the decision-making we take, that the thing that drives us is, are these decisions going to increase the level of cultural relations between two countries or not? That is the thing that has to drive every decision we're taking. I think the issue of entrepreneurialism, were we entrepreneurial in the past? I think, yes, we were in parts, absolutely. Were we collectively, organisationally entrepreneurial? No, I don't think we were. Nor do I necessarily think we are now. I think there is still more work we need to do on this. But what are the dimensions of entrepreneurialism? I think, first of all, it is our ability to move at pace. I think it's our ability to operate at scale. And I think really operating at a scale which is meaningful against our public service ethos is a very important challenge. I think it's also our attitude towards risk. And I think that we remain too risk averse. Now, I'm not, please don't go away and think that I've said now we can go and take lots and lots of risks. I'm not. Being a risk taker, we need to be an organisation that recognises risk and therefore takes sensible decisions about what risks we should and should not take. Not an organisation which is afraid of risk and therefore never takes any. I don't think we're an organisation at the moment which learns enough from the mistakes we make. So I think we should learn to celebrate mistakes a little bit more. Because at the moment, everything we will do is always a success. And actually, we know in our hearts that is not true. We make lots and lots of mistakes. I certainly make lots and lots of mistakes as an individual. And I'm quite sure that everybody in this auditorium does too. And learning from those mistakes seems to me to be actually also at the heart of an entrepreneurial organisation. So I think there is more that we can do in changing the culture that we have as an organisation. This is not about changing skill sets or accountabilities or anything of that kind. It's about changing culture and understanding. And what I would like would be for us to be an organisation that really understands how we deliver the public benefit, the public purpose that we have in a way which actually enables us to both generate income, deliver greater impact, and do it in a way which is faster, more energetic, reaches more people, and which learns from the mistakes that we make along the way.
So obviously partnerships and links and relationships are very central to
Absolutely.
this theme that you're talking about. Now that the visit is over and you've met a lot of Indian contacts, what is your feeling about the UK-India relationship? Because do you think it is scored 6 out of 10 as the recent Reimagine findings pointed out?
I don't know, I think is the honest answer. I don't think I'm deeply enough involved day to day with India to be able to make that judgment. 6 out of 10 feels not bad, actually, but clearly not as good as we would like it to be. I think that there remains a need for us to inject more energy into the UK-India relationship. I think it needs to be broader. I'm really delighted with the Reimagine project. I've looked at it and I think it is an excellent piece of work. But we need to build a response to that which matches the scale of opportunity which I think India has. And I think overall I would say that my impression from this trip is, again, the scale of opportunity for the relationship with India is absolutely enormous. I think the desire on the Indian side to have that relationship is high, but it's not unique. And I think it demands a response from the UK, which is faster, more of greater scale, working with more organizations if we're going to respond. Because India is not going to hang around waiting for us. So we've got to actually move at the pace that India is looking for. And I think that's the challenge which is coming up. So just looking at the Reimagine program around the cultural, and particularly around the cultural organizations, I think that one of the big pieces of work we've got to do is really work with the big cultural players in the UK to actually develop something which is a much more systematic response to India than I think we've had in the past. We've had lots and lots of ad hoc individual organizational responses. I think we're looking for something which is much more holistic, and I think the opportunity for us is to begin to convene that response to India as an organization.
Okay, thank you. We, of course, are going to ask the China question.
Yes.
Yes, China is making a lot of headlines. Executive board member John Won was on BBC and also in other blogs talking about the importance of learning Mandarin for students in the UK. You've had a long professional relationship as well. Tell us honestly, is China more important than India?
No.
And so what role do these two countries play in the agenda for cultural relations?
I think it is a huge mistake to set India and China up as rivals or opposites, or that you either have one or the other. Clearly, from a British perspective, we're looking for a highly effective relationship with both countries, and I think it would seem to me to be an extraordinary lack of confidence in our own country if we felt we could only have an effective relationship with one.
Yes.
Are we really saying we don't have the capacity as a country to actually have that all-encompassing relationship with both? It seems to me, of course, we do. That they are different countries at different stages in their development and evolution, very different cultural backgrounds, very different historical backgrounds, very different relationship backgrounds. All of that is absolutely true. So we can't have exactly the same response to India and China. I think the British-Indian relationship is an extraordinarily complex one, multi-layered over historical, political, cultural, personal, in a way which is much richer than the relationship with China. And that makes it much more complicated, because there's nothing quite so complicated as people to complicate a relationship. And I think it requires a more nuanced, a cleverer response here to the opportunities in India than I think necessarily China does. China, in many ways, is an easier country to operate in than India. It doesn't have the unfortunate complexities of being a democracy. Thank God India is. But it does make it a more complicated place. So I don't think these are either-ors. I think we are looking for a hugely expanded, more confident, effective, long-term cultural relationship with both countries. And we as an organisation need to be able to deliver that in both.
There'll be questions from members of the staff on other British Council-related subjects. So I'm going to ask you something completely different. You travel a lot, and you hardly get any personal time. So how do you relax on a trip like this? What are your interests? If you wanted to know that.
I tell you, there's no relaxation on this trip at all. I have to admit, it's been a long time since I had to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go to bed at 11 o'clock at night. I get a huge amount of my energy from actually these sorts of engagements, having the opportunity to meet colleagues. I can't tell you, it is just fantastically exciting to see the work that we do. I enjoy all the formal bits and going and seeing ministers and so on, but actually it's having the engagement, having the discussions with staff and understanding why do you as individuals, incredibly talented individuals, want to work for this rather curious organisation? What is it that you get out of it? Why do you do this?
We are interviewing you this time.
So I think that gives me a huge amount of energy. I love visiting different places. I wish I had more time to sometimes get out, but I quite often walk around cities in the evening and those sorts of things just to try and get a bit of a sense of where I am.
So I'm going to ask one final question from me, and then we'll move to our colleagues. So if you weren't heading the British Council, what would you be heading?
Oh, I'm not sure. What a good question. I don't think anybody's asked that one. I've no idea. This is a job which I've wanted for a very long time. It's an organisation I love and value incredibly. I think for me, and people in London say it to me, you know, heads of all sorts of exotic organisations and wonderful British organisations, you know, come up to me and say, you've got the best job in London, and I'm inclined to agree with them.
Yes, okay. We agree with them too, and we enjoy working for the British Council as much, isn't that? So we'll now move to staff questions, and I can see Anjum right there. She'll ask the first question.
Hello, Martin. I work in partnerships in India, in Delhi. My question is, Prime Minister Cameron came with a very high-profile business delegation. I think it consisted of most of the top CEOs and business leaders from the leading British businesses. Knowing that we have a huge focus on partnerships in the Council, especially on working with corporate partners, would be very useful to have your thoughts on how can we best leverage this visit to enhance the scope and scale of our work here in India?
I think it's a mistake for us to see ad hoc engagement with senior figures as somehow going to transform the partnership. I think one of the things we've learned over the last couple of years is that from our work in partnership that this is a slow burn, long-term activity, not a quick one-off. So I'm not going to have a conversation with the chairman of, I don't know, Atkins on the plane, which will suddenly produce an opportunity for India. What I can do and do is I have a conversation with people like Bob Dudley of BP, which is about, this is what we've been doing over this period of time. This is where the opportunities are in India. Are there ways in which we can develop this further? And I think it's really important that when we talk about partnerships, we recognise that organisations we partner with are going to be long-term partners where we are not going to be just asking for a bit of sponsorship money for a particular activity, but actually we are going to be working together on developing the way in which we work for the future. You only have to take the Microsoft relationship as the case in point, and I know it's not an example from India. But there we started in very small scale, and it has just grown and grown and grown. It was great. 2 weeks ago, we were given the opportunity to take 20 people to meet the Prince of Wales at Clarence House, just to talk about partnership. And so we went with the Premier League, we went with Microsoft, we went with Lloyd's Register, we went with BP, we went with I'm always going to forget one, aren't I? We went with people from the Creative Entrepreneurs Programme. And what we were really talking about was the way in which we have, with these different organisations, slowly built a relationship which is deeply and effective and embedded in the way in which both they and we work. And I think that's the future for it.
Okay. Next question is Michael. He's on the top row there.
As we discussed earlier, we're working in partnership with DFID on the teacher development program in Bihar. In this project, we're using ODA funds to support the development of the state, particularly in English. After 2015, DFID are pulling out of direct aid to India, and we're currently rethinking ODA funding. So I'd like to ask, will we be able to access ODA funds to leverage such opportunities in the future? And how do we communicate this to our external stakeholders?
I don't know is the simple answer. Clearly, this is right at the very heart of some of the conversation which is going on in DFID at the moment. And it's not, to be honest, it's not a dialogue which is involving us. We obviously make our points known, but exactly where that's going, I don't know. Certainly my understanding, and it's a very rudimentary understanding, is that while direct aid is likely to cease in 2015 between the UK and India. That doesn't mean that India will not be an ODA country. I think it doesn't mean that we aren't able to spend the ODA-denominated funds that the British Council has within its grant within India. So that's one piece which I think is important, because clearly if India no longer was an ODA country, then that would be much more difficult. And those decisions are not made by the British government, they're made by OECD. Yeah. I think the second thing to say is, my understanding is that DFID still intend to retain a level of support for India, but it is likely to be distributed in a different way. And again, my understanding is not completely full on this, but the analogy I hear is it's a little bit like moving from IDA funds from the World Bank towards loan funds, which is it becomes much more within support to Indian government programs which are fundamentally funded by Indian government, whether it's central or state level government. So I think there will still be resources available. Quite how it's going to work and how we're going to access it, frankly, I don't know at the moment. And I think it's clearly something which we need to spend time looking at and thinking about. But I think the truth of the matter is that, and whether or not it's in 2015 or at some point in the future, India will not be a development aid country. And I think as an organisation, we need to prepare ourselves for the day when it becomes a country which, where resources are likely to come through partnership with Indian organisations, whether government or others. And that seems to me to be an appropriate maturing of the relationship and indeed the country.
Yeah. We'll come back to the front row here. Gaurav is our head of partnerships. He has a question there on program development.
Hello, Martin.
Hi.
My questions was around programs. India in a big way is contributing to strengthening the India-UK relations through our programs in the 3 SBUs,
Yeah.
English, Arts, Education, Society. It'll be interesting to have your views on how do you see the programs development and delivery vis-a-vis, other countries globally. I'm sure you travel and see how programs are operating elsewhere. Yeah. So how do you see India in that context?
I think India has a unique position within the British Council because it is, I think it's right to say, the only country which actually covers absolutely every aspect of British Council activity, and certainly at the scale that you do. So, China doesn't, because China simply doesn't have things like direct teaching and so on. Other big operations don't have other aspects of your work. So India is a unique place within the British Council family. Its second uniqueness is that it is operating across a continental-sized country and a country of huge importance to the UK and where the relationship is as complex as we talked about earlier. So I do think that we are looking to India as a place which gives us the opportunity to experiment and develop new ways of working, new approaches towards programs. Organisationally, I think there is more we still need to do to ensure that we create once and apply in multiple different ways across our organisation. I think we still have a tendency to try to recreate the same programs time and time again. I'm not sure that we're good enough at sharing and knowledge and understanding. And that doesn't mean establishing a one way only to do something and then churning out like a sausage factory. And I know that we've been through that in the past and it didn't work, and I hope we've learned and we've moved on from that. But I am very keen that as an organisation, we don't spread our resources very, very thin across lots and lots of initiatives. I think I'm looking for 4 or 5 really big, significant initiatives. Not all of them are going to be relevant to India, but the majority of them are. And I think that your involvement in our understanding how we develop these programs, the ways in which we work them, and then using you as a not a place to experiment, because I don't think we experiment very well, but a place that we pilot and learn. I think that is going to be part of the agenda for programs development here in India.
We have the last question from Philippa here.
I have a question about gender.
Yeah.
If we look at our organisation at senior management levels, then we see a significant underrepresentation of women. We see about 28% at Band 10 and obviously 3 out of 9 on the executive board. I'd like to know, what do you feel are the reasons for that?
It is a big issue for us, and the entire question of diversity across our organisation. I think it was quite interesting. I was actually talking to Les Borjevich, the Vice Chancellor of Cambridge, about exactly this issue yesterday when we were at the Girls' College. And I think we share the same challenge that Cambridge University does, is that we have a large numbers of very talented women in the middle ranks of the organisation. And for a number of reasons, they are not necessarily finding it either easy or necessarily wanting to move through into the more senior ranks and levels in the organisation. And we have to understand what are the barriers which are getting in the way. And those are cultural. I don't think there are any institutional barriers which stand in people's way. I think there are cultural barriers, which may well be about the nature of the culture in senior management. People say, is it too masculine? Is it too aggressive? It may well be issues around work-life balance. It may well be the issues around the way in which, certainly for us as an organisation, at the most senior levels, there's a huge demand, for example, on travel, on willingness to work overseas, etc., etc. So there are a number of issues, I think, within the organisation. So I don't think it's an easy one to really understand. And we have been doing a certain amount of work on really just asking the question, what are the easily removable barriers? What are the cultural shifts and changes we need to make as an organisation which provides more opportunity for women to be successful? Do we understand what the obstacles or the things which actually get in the way in a more granular, a more effective way than I think we do at the moment? But it's certainly an area which we, I don't think we should beat ourselves up too badly, because we have done significantly better in recent years, but we also shouldn't kid ourselves that there isn't actually still a significant way to go. And that is true. I think it's very important we don't see this simply as an issue which is gender. Actually, it is a much bigger issue, for example, for black and minority ethnic populations within our organisation, and an even bigger issue for people with disability in our organisation. So, like many organisations in the UK and elsewhere around the world, there is a long way for us to go to be truly representative of the society from which we spring, but also one which is truly open and accessible to people with talents wherever they might come from.
Thank you very much, Martin, for sparing the time.
Thank you very much indeed.
We hand over to Rob back.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew, for all those questions, and thanks, Martin, for answering them so candidly, and thank you all for your questions. And I think just over the last couple of days, I know a lot of people keep an eye out here, hanging on by around the visit, and these visits, how many swans in, swans out, and everything's smooth, but there's a lot of work there behind that, and I know that British Council is important. Martin, half the delegation received that. Although Martin said that he doesn't have very much time on this visit, seeing anything of Delhi or anything of India, He has assured me that he's going to come back in the autumn, and yes, he talks about that. He's going to come back for 2 months. Was it 2 months? Or was it,
I wish.
We'll get Marty back for a week and have much more time to spend with us, and maybe a bit more time to see him.
Yeah.
So please thank Martin again.